from entrepreneur to now investing in real estate. And his company helps entrepreneurs invest passively in real estate. So it's a really, really cool program that he's got going there. So Ian, I appreciate you taking the time and really excited to get into things with you.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for having me.
So let's go to the beginning. So you grew up in Texas, or that's just where you lived most of your life?
I was born and raised in Austin. And so
Okay,
my
nice.
only stint away from home was like studying abroad or long extended travel. But this is my home base,
Nice. Where'd you study abroad?
Barcelona. And, which
Nice.
evidently now
Dang.
is a problem for tourists to go to. But I spent time over in Barcelona and loved it. This was in college, right? Got to see a bunch of Europe. So that kind of started like my travel bug at a young age.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, you see a lot of the Spanish architecture taken back to Texas, and you realize like, oh, this is not Texas didn't invent this. They stole it.
Yeah, and it makes you feel everything's pretty new over here from like architecture and design. It's the States just doesn't have what Europe has, and so yeah, it's cool. We try to travel as much as we can with the family.
Nice. And you went to school in Austin too, right?
Yes, University of Texas.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. I guess you're SEC now. You weren't SEC. You're not the true old school SEC like Auburn was, but hey, that's all right.
you're
Uh,
Auburn grad, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, big
you know
Auburn
what?
guy.
It's good for UT and I'm happy with how they're playing and how the program's turned around. When I went to school, it was the Vince Young, Colt McCoy era. So everything was good, right? We were going to the national championship, we were winning, and then the moment Colt McCoy ended, UT was stale for years. So I'm happy to see him back in the SEC and winning again.
Yeah, it's cool. I like seeing all the competition. To me, it used to be way more fun than pro football. Now it's kind of pretty much the same. I mean, shoot, you guys' quarterback had like an $8 million offer. I just read about it. He had
Yeah,
an $8 million offer to stay in college. It's like wow. But so, what has it been
yeah.
like to? I mean, Austin has exploded. What has it been like to live in an area like that for so long and see how its real estate market has just totally transformed?
I'll say this, if anybody had real estate in Austin years back, they're loving it, right? As from an appreciation standpoint. As a resident though, these sorts of things, they everything loses its appeal after time. I love Austin and the city's got a lot to offer, but if you are talking like once you have something for an extended period of time, it loses its sizzle. So great outdoor space. The people are generally really really friendly, but because it's getting bigger, the small town feel like when I was a kid, people would wave at each other at stop signs and you know open the door for each other. I'm seeing less and less of it now that it's become this big popular city.
Yeah, it's. I was looking at a graph this morning for something else, and Texas is, population, like the net population of the entire country. I was just looking at all the states. Texas is like by far the most growth out of any state. I think it's a lot of, unfortunately for Texans, it's a lot of Californians who are getting sick of the politics and coming out there and, they're gonna slowly do what they did here in Colorado and turn it into California 2.0.
Well,
So
and so being in Austin as well, like Austin is its own oasis amongst Texas that I guess more of that I'll call it is welcomed. So we're getting a mix of people. So surprising, a lot of people talk about California residents coming, but a few years back I had looked and Florida was an equal participant in terms of our in migration into the state, which I found interesting. But yeah, a lot of growth. It's slowing down now, but we did have our spike over the last couple years.
interesting. I wouldn't have thought of people from Florida going to Texas, but I guess I mean people move everywhere for all sorts of reasons. But I know I had two brother-in-laws that were both just moved to Austin a couple of years ago, so it's definitely a popular spot. And I don't know what it is about some cities. Some cities just have that cool factor where young people want to go there, and Austin, for whatever reason, seems to have it. And I've been there. It is a pretty cool place.
See, I like Denver where you're at. It's a
Yeah.
you guys have much better weather than we do. I'll put it that way. It's hot most of the year here.
Yeah, my one of my brother-in-laws was describing how in Texas the seasonal depression is summer because it gets so hot you can't even go outside, which is just. I mean, people think Denver is like the frozen tundra, but it's not. It's more sunny days a year than Florida, so I can't say enough good things about it. But unless you're from California, in which I would say it's way worse, don't come here. So you were you helped run a dry cleaning business, right? For a number of years.
Yeah, so dry cleaning was a family business, and my dad had started it back in the 80s and just kind of grew up around it. Um, he had then stepped away, and I think he just got burnt out, right? Like in any business burnout is real, or profession or career. So he had stepped away from it, and then what got me into it was right around when I got out of college. Um, this was 2009, and nobody was hiring. A lot of people were going back to law school or whatever they were trying to figure out because the economy was in a tough spot. So I got into the dry cleaning business, and my dad said, "Why don't you give it a shot? Act like you're an owner. You're not, but go for it and see if you can develop this thing and bring it back to where it needed to be." Because it was broke. It had like a good foundation, but it wasn't making any money. So it was fun. It was crazy. I was 21 when I got involved with it and started pressing clothes. Which, by the way, if you've ever taken anything to a dry cleaner, so much respect for the people, like for pressing clothing is such a hard backbreaking experience that it just mentally will beat you down. And my first week in there, the group in there and the staff just loved like sending back all my crappy press work, you know, double creasing pants or this isn't good enough. I think it was like a really fun exercise because they thought this is the owner's kid. He's 21. He's coming in here. He's not going to make it. So I'll never forget. I would go home that first week. It was like 110 degrees summer, and plus you're in this hot, steamy plant, and just completely exhausted, body covered in heat rash. Just got my ass kicked. So that was the start of my dry cleaning career, and then just kind of learned over the years, and did that for nearly 15 years. And eventually went on to buy it. So I got a lot of my business skills and work ethic through that business.
Nice. There's not a lot of people who will appreciate dry cleaning the way I do. As a Navy guy, trying to get dress whites to look good, it sucks. It is hard. And it is something that, like, there is an art to it. To being the guy who can do a really, really good job of making something have solid creases. Well, I always had the problem. Every time I ironed something, the other side of the clothes was now on the outside. Like there would just be a massive, like now I
Yeah.
have these permanent marks of pockets or whatever. So it's really cool.
We were always
It's a
afraid
skill.
too when we if we would get a Navy uniform in, when Army would bring like their BDUs, those are pretty simple, and there's some forgiveness with the camo, but when it came to having white press shirt with a military crease, we were always so worried about it because it's hard. It's just a difficult thing to do. Most of them are pre-pleated though these days to where it's also hard to mess up. You've got a guide to follow.
Yeah, they always called them the cheater outfits, but I mean that's for something you wear every day. The craziest thing about the Navy uniform, and this shows you how good the government is at thinking things through. The uniform is solid white, at least in that time of the year. The boots are black, and you have to shine them and polish them. So you walk around, and your shoes just get all over your pants. So like, no matter what, if you had to wear your dress whites, I always was pissed because like I knew that entire night I was going to be spent cleaning my pants because I, for a fact, they were going to get dirty.
Shoe
It's
polish
just,
on your pants.
yeah, just the whole bottom of them,
Ah.
just totally. It was always they always wanted to, you know, you to wear them to fun events, but then it's like you don't want to hold a drink because you don't want to spill because it's just the most obvious spill in the world. Anything on that solid white uniform was just terrible. But yeah, it's
And you're paying
so
for that bill too when it goes to the cleaners.
yeah. Not only that, I didn't realize this. We paid for those uniforms when we were in boot camp. You always hear of them issuing your uniform. And when you get out of boot camp, there's like a receipt for what you spent, and you spend money on every little piece of uniform stuff they give you.
Nothing's
It's
free,
like,
Jeff. They take it out of your
no,
pay if they don't make you pay for it up front.
no, exactly. I remember seeing that, being like, oh my gosh, I thought we got these. Like, that's the one thing I thought we got, but no, we don't. So we'll get into it later in this. But talking about depreciation now and saving on taxes, man, it's a sport for me because the government they don't treat us the right way. So it's always good to save money where we can. But so when you walked into this, I don't want to say you inherited, right? You took over a business like you mentioned was making no money. How many stores was it at that time?
There were 15 stores at the time, so it had a really good foundation built. But several of the stores weren't profitable. So the next couple of years, we're trying to figure out. okay, what do I shut down? Where can I open a new store? Because the process is rinse and repeat, right? You keep these small retail stores open, and then you will basically, send a truck during the day to deliver clothing, send a truck at night to pick up the clothing. So it's really quick to open a new store. So it was really trying to fine tune like what's working and what isn't. And and that took 5+ years of just hard work. Plus, I was 21. You don't know any different. Like there are so many things you could look back on now, and be like, man, I should have, you know, I worked my ass off doing that, but I should have done it smarter. Could have got there quicker. And I don't regret any of the learning experiences. I think you have to have it to be good at whatever you do. But it's funny, looking back, having a few years under my belt, thinking, well, there's a lot of better ways we could have done this. So yeah, 15 stores, um, zero profit, good revenue, but zero profit. So it was not a bad place to start because we already had a customer base. It was just let's put stuff in order. Let's wear uniforms. Let's modernize and put computer systems in place. The basics that now are, everywhere, but in the dry cleaning industry, it was always 10 years behind everybody else. So we would play catch up, and then that's really as I, put all that stuff into place, that's what made people last. Many just never adopted in what a normal business should do, and they either went out of business before COVID, or if not, they went out during COVID because COVID was brutal. 85% of revenue gone in like a week and a half.
I guess people don't need to have their suits, you know, dry cleaned and whatnot if they're not going to work. Is that really what kind of just led to it
Yeah,
all?
nothing. There
Wow.
was nothing going on. So, yet I had never worked harder in my life during COVID because then it's, I'll call it panic mode now. You got to save your business. So you learn, the amount of strategic maneuvers you have to pull to get there. But it was an awful time. I'm glad it's over with. A lot of businesses went out, but and then the ones that survived really, flourished after making it through that couple years.
Gotcha. So to get to 14 stores, I would have to imagine prior to that it was profitable. Otherwise, there wouldn't really be incentive to expand. So was that the case? Was it like a profitable business and then somehow the profit just started kind of dwindling away by the time you came in there?
Yeah, I think so. In the 90s, it was the number one business you could open to become a millionaire, right? So you would have, there
Really?
were
Wow.
stories of lines out the door for people to get, men and women were wearing suits to work. So over the years, like habits changed. We call it fast fashion. Think about companies like H&M or clothes that are, stylish enough to wear to work, but they're replaceable to where you don't, maybe you cannot dry clean them as much. So as things evolve and there wasn't the supervision the business needed, it started to dwindle. And I think because it had low prices, it just kind of like helped it hang in there. Um, but that's all that was. It was just hanging on by a thread, having to cover payroll from real estate of all things. What was the savior of the business for time. And then, fortunately, though, like after a couple years, I think I bought it 4 years later. After getting involved, 4 or 5. From that point on, obviously things were streamlined. It was a running business as it should, and it didn't. And I was already had been running it for 5 years. It was ownership wasn't a scary thing. It was like, oh, this is the right thing to do, and that's how the transition happened. And the IRS won't let you, nor would I want to ever just get, receive something as a gift, right? Even though it's a family business, you have to have an adequate value on it. You have to have proper interest rates, what is deemed acceptable because IRS wants their cut. And so it was fun, man. I love it, and it taught me so much about business. You can from any business, if you're running a small business, I think as long as it's not like e-commerce or internet-based stuff, you can take those same principles and behind your product, you can run another business. So take it in this example, dry cleaning. We're cleaning dirty clothes, right? It's all, it was very transactional. But if you take that part of it away, what's behind the scenes? Staff, recruiting, hiring, leasing, legal, insurance, advertising. The same thing that all businesses have. So that's what I love so much about small business. And I love talking about it too. So sorry for rambling on, but
Oh
I
no.
talk all day about this stuff.
Hey, it's a podcast. You're supposed to ramble on.
Okay, all right.
My funny you mentioned that, and I totally agree with you because my major in college was actually entrepreneurship and family business. Like that is the name of what I studied, and it was one of the weirdest things because going into college, everybody was telling me, "Hey, that's not applicable. That doesn't show up on a resume." And I knew what I wanted to do, and of all the people I knew in college, I'm probably the only one I think actually using what I learned in my degree, funny enough, because I'm an entrepreneur and I have a family business. There are so many things that, yes, obviously, whatever business you want to get into, there's some component to that that excites you that you got to do. Like if you're a restaurant, you're cooking food. If you're in real estate like I am, you're finding deals. But the stuff that kills businesses is all the stuff that you don't want to do, like the bookkeeping, the taxes, the managing people, like that kind of stuff translate no matter it translates to whatever business you want to run. And
Did
so
you
it's
have
a
a family
super.
business when you went in to study entrepreneurship and family business?
No. So I didn't. I grew up though. My brother was an entrepreneur as well, and he was 8 years younger, or sorry, 8 years older than me. So when I got to the kind of age where hey, maybe we should be a lifeguard for the summer or work at Chipotle or something. Uh, I convinced my dad to buy a lawnmower for me, and I mowed his lawn for free, and then I went and mowed all my other neighbors' lawns, and I could get like $50 in about an hour mowing their lawn. And I had fuel, but it wasn't much, and that's what immediately ignited this. And because I saw my brother do that, but by then he's in college, and I'm sitting here looking at it, it's like, man, I don't want to ever work a job and get paid a fixed amount per hour when I can go out here and hustle and kind of name my price, so to speak. So um, it's not exactly like that once you're an adult. It's kind of like you just work 24/7 and you can never turn the business off. Is kind of what it feels like now. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I no matter what happens, I'll always be an entrepreneur.
What's so crazy about it too, it's entrepreneurship is not for the weak. You just mentioned like you can't turn your brain off. That's a blessing and a curse because I think that if you take that if you take that approach to anything you do, the difference between, let's say, somebody that's smart and an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur may not be as smart, but their work ethic or their determination won't let them fail. And so I would take that person any day over somebody that has a higher IQ. Problem is, you can't always turn it off. So now I'll go into a coffee shop and I'll start analyzing their inventory's low. That staff member's sitting on their butt, like who's in charge
Yeah,
here? My wife hates it, but you just can't turn it off. It's everything is a business. You were in the Navy, right? Yeah, so Navy, like that's government run. That's a business. You had to pay for your uniforms. Like everything works on transactions, and so it's really neat how like I'm glad you studied it, and now here you are doing your own thing. So congrats on that.
yeah, it's going. There is a science to it. I think a lot of people get into entrepreneurship because they really like something and they don't like where they work. And they think, oh, I'm going to be my own boss. It's like, that's the worst thing in the world to be your own boss because you're a horrible boss to yourself. Like, I've always found that because the hours I set for myself are insane. If I ever asked an employee to do that, they would quit on the spot. But I found what entrepreneurs, like, I think the common thread I've seen with them is that they would rather earn everything and know that it's their own fault. Like if you make $1 million, that's because of you. If you go bankrupt, it's because of you. They'd rather do that than work for somebody else and have their success determined by somebody else. Good or bad. I think that's what I always come back to. It's like if I'm not doing what I wanted to, I have one person to blame and it's me. And I love that because I can do something about it and situations can stress you out like with the business, but you don't ever feel stuck, I guess. Like you can always do something about where you're at.
Yeah, well, you have to like along the way you learn you have to pivot your business because if you don't, it'll fail. Like I said, like it is not business is hard, and there's no way around that. So again, for you to like you mentioned, like, hey, I'm in control. If I make $1 million, great. But if I make zero, it's also my fault. A lot of people can't put that weight on their shoulders. And so, and many do and fail, right? Like we talk about all these success stories but, behind every one of those, there's all these failures. But everyone who has a success story also has the failures. Like, you have to fail. Something has to go wrong. You have to pivot. And so that's why I love it. I think that no matter what you do in life, even if you go into like work a W-2 after that and you have a career, that mindset will still help you leagues beyond what somebody that may have never tried, would have.
You also have to, it's an immense lesson in responsibility. I mean, you mentioned 14 stores making no money. I bet you every one of the employees at those stores is like, oh, here's the really rich owner. He's walking in here, he's just printing money. When it's like the only person in the entire business not making money a lot of times is the owner. And it's not something people think about. They just see the revenue. But man, I remember I worked at a restaurant for a while in college, and I thought that too. I was like, man, they got to be printing money. But man, restaurants, one day they were kind of explaining to me how their costs go up and down and they never really know. And it's a nightmare. It is a tough thing to do. Any entrepreneur, regardless of what industry they are, that has been successful for 5 or more years, I'm always eager to learn from, because there's something that they did that the average person would not stay with something that long. The amount of time it takes to succeed.
The dry cleaning business specifically has really low margins, and so a lot of people think it costs a lot to, uh, you know, and some do, right? Some dry cleaners charge a lot. We were on the bottom end of that on like a value side. So the recipe for success was, we're going to have lower margins and more volume, and everything was volume based. So with that comes burnout and a lot of issues, but it's also a really good model, because if you think about it, like, what are some of the mainstay companies that survive today? Like, you can pick your sweet spot. Am I going to be, the premier experience, the cheapest, the best customer service? Like, you got to pick your lane. But then think about Costco, right? Like, they're running on fixed margins. Walmart, low margin business, high volume, same thing. And so if you can find your sweet spot, which is what we ended up doing, like with some of those stores, our profit margins generally at that price level were like anywhere between 9% to like 17%. And that swing, you're working on thin margins, on thin ice. Restaurants, I believe, are lower, which is really tough. If you talk to any entrepreneur, restaurant business is very hard. But you're right, like you said, when you work there, you see like top line revenue, and you don't know there's a lot going into this. This chain doesn't stop with me making my $10 an hour when this company's making so much money. It's like, no, everything costs. um, how long did you work in the restaurant for?
2 years.
So yeah, so you probably learned some good skills there.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. I mean, for me, it kind of immediately set in my mind that didn't want to be. I wanted to be a business owner, but not necessarily running a business. It was interesting to see the person who ran that restaurant. She had a health issue where basically her neck was injured and she couldn't work, and her business suffered, and suffered bad. I mean, she went from being open 6 days a week to open 4 days a week just because of when she could tolerate the pain of
Yeah.
physically being there, because she didn't know how to have people under her. And it was incredible. Everybody who came into the restaurant would say it was fantastic. There was no problems with that, but it was difficult for them to relinquish the control of their business to somebody else to actually run it. So for me, it was an interesting lesson in that, okay, there's a difference between being in your business and working on your business. And I got to see that up close and personal, and how you can really trap yourself quickly to where you're just an underpaid employee very quickly.
Yeah, I was trapped. I was like very much guilty of that. And I think I put myself in the center of every process. Again, like rewinding, I was 21 years old. I had zero business experience. And my dad wasn't, he wasn't there on the day to day. Him and I never worked a day together. So, you know, at this point you're learning and you're putting, okay, how can we make this thing survive and make it as best as I can do? And all you can do is what you know, right? And sometimes again, hard work does not fail if you learn how to pivot. And so along the way you learn all these things, but at the end of the day, like, if too many people become trapped, and this is with their job too. I used to complain about this and think, I'm so busy, no one understands how busy I am. And then you can talk to anybody. If I would have known you 10 years ago and we talked, you would say the same thing, right? Like, none of us are special. So the special ones are those that have found a way to pull themselves out. And I think I'd centered so much around the business around me, or at least I thought I did. It really didn't need me. When I sold the business, and part of this was an emotional thing of like, okay, I've got little kids. I want to spend more time with my family. Here's an opportunity that I can, that I can chase because they don't come often, right? Like you have to act when opportunities come. Um, I didn't feel that I could have broken through the ceiling to the next level emotionally without somehow reinventing myself and pulling myself out of every one of the every process. And then you feel like, man, I'm letting my people down. So much of this we built together, and then I'm like casually stepping away. I feel like maybe it won't run the same way. And so I I love hearing success stories about people that buy a business or build it and then be able to pull themselves out of it and run it, but still be like a part of it. That's the sweet spot. That's where everyone should shoot for because it's not easy. I think it's harder than running a successful business is to for that owner to identify like where do I sit in this process or how do I get myself out to where I'm not the bottleneck.
Right. It's very similar to raising a child, raising a business, because in the beginning it needs you for everything. It literally cannot survive without you. And then if you do a good job, eventually it won't need you. And that's a weird thing for people to grasp. And but it's something I think more entrepreneurs need to search like to shoot for because a lot of them, kind of get to the end of having a business and they just kind of shut it down and leave. They can't sell it because it depends on them. And they can't necessarily hire themselves out because they just don't want to, don't know how to, don't know that's an option. So when you reached the point where you said, okay, maybe it makes sense for me to sell, you mentioned your kids. Was there any other factors weighing into that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kids are obviously one thing, but it was me. It was a gut feeling of um, when you do something, you want to put your heart into it. And I had reached a point to where my heart wasn't in it as much. So, for example, there's a local competition every year for best business in Austin, best florist, best moving company, etc. So we would always go to try to win best dry cleaner, and we won. There's a couple big other names here, and so in Austin, that was a fun thing for our staff to get involved with and try to win that competition. So we started to win it year after year, and it wasn't just because we put in effort. We were a good company. Like we took good care of the our customers and tried our best, and so the results showed. But then all of a sudden, towards the end, that same feeling of waking up in the morning every year, I would check that thing, or And the dry cleaning business starts early, by the way. Like we've got people in the plant at 2 in the morning. We've got first person in our management was there at like 5 in the morning, and so things happen early. And I remember getting up and trying to, do we win? How's it look this year? And eventually towards the end, that was like, we won my final year, running the business. We had won that award. And I remember just feeling like, huh, we won. Okay, let's get up and keep going. There was no more passion, like heart into it. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe that's a sign for me. This isn't about, I built up the company. It's time for someone else to build it and put their heart into it. The staff doesn't deserve for me to be halfway there.
Yeah.
You got to be fully committed. So you said other factors. Yeah, I would say my kids, I feel like that's my external, I'm not even calling it excuse. Like that's the truth on the outside, but like people make decisions for selfish reasons and you have to take care of your own reasons first. I think, in order to be there to provide for your kids. I remember I would, I came home and I would like sit in front of my kids and we'd have dinner. At this point, I just had my second child. So I had a 3-year old and then a newborn. And, they'd be talking and my daughter was so excited to tell me about, something at school. And I just wasn't listening. Like my head was 100% at work. It sucked. It's a bad feeling. And so those are those moments when you're like, man, I got to be better. This isn't what it's supposed to be like. Because money doesn't matter at that point. You're like, as you said, that time is finite. Your children need you for a period of time and then they don't. I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to have them now and to get the time now with them.
Right. It's interesting. It was more of a personal and just where you were at in your life decision than it was like, hey, the business had reached X in revenue, so we knew we could get this kind of multiple. So What advice would you give to other people who maybe are in the middle of running a business now and they're starting to get to the point where they're on the fence? They don't know if they want to retire. They don't know if they want to hire somebody out. They want to shut it down or sell it. What kind of things would you tell them to look for in their business and in them to know what decision to make?
I would tell people that if they're thinking about an exit or selling or closing down, obviously try to sell your business. Don't just shut it down. Even if you think it only depends on you, perhaps there's a way people can buy your customer list or your book of business. Um, but start to think about how you run your business in those last few years. Act like you're being bought, even if you have no buyers. What I found was that when I was bought, we went through a really extensive due diligence process, third party due diligence. Guy had an M&A background that acquired me, incredibly smart, way smarter than I was. So during that process, I'm like, oh man, I gotta, I'm maybe not running this to the caliber in which, or let me take it back. It was running very well, but I thought I can do better. And so you start to reassess how you spend money, how you are marketing your business, because the very first question when someone comes to buy your business is like, what is the owner's role? When they leave, how much do I have to pay to replace them? So if I'm taking, an exorbitant salary from the business and then they're looking at it like, well, we don't have to pay somebody that much to run this business, but we have to pay a premium and everything runs on that owner, it devalues your business tremendously. So you have to figure out a way to say, look, when I step away, you can come in and depending on the level of your business, if you're selling a business for seven figures, that person who's buying $1 million business and up, they don't want to come in and buy a job. And we talked about this already. Like entrepreneurship can be a job if you're not careful. More than that, right? We talked about, you're working more hours than anyone. Maybe some people pay themselves last. So I would just, through the lens of try to run your business like you're going to sell it. And then I think whether you do or not, you're going to run your business better than what you did prior.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. So when you sold it, did you have an idea of what you were going to do after that, or were you selling it? I mean, did you know real estate was what you were going to get into, or did you sell it with the intention of like, I just need to get this sold and then I'll figure it out?
I I assumed that it was going to go that route. I started, while I had the business, I started buying rental properties in 2014. So this is in the Austin area. I would try to get like one a year. Sometimes there was a year when we couldn't get one, but it was very much like I lived beneath my means. I took the profit that I had from the business, and instead of living a luxurious life, I would live within my means and then go buy property. So in the very beginning, you asked about like what's Austin like now, and I said, well, if you had property before COVID or before the boom, it's awesome. Um, that that is why I knew I loved real estate because it's like, okay, maybe I don't cash flow today, but I'm setting myself up to where these properties are going to be paid off by tenants, not by me, over the years, to where now I have options, and life is about options. So I knew when I got out, number one, I like needed to press pause and I had to keep telling myself, I can't get back into business. I know, why did you get out? Why did you get out? Well, it's, to spend more time with my family and kids, but it's hard to turn that mind off. And so we can, talk about it, but like what got me into what I'm doing now is there was number one, I had a personal problem of I sold this business and I was going to have a big tax bill due, big check to write to the IRS. And so using my background in real estate, I started looking around like, how can I pay less in taxes legally? Right. And, and there were only a couple of options and some of them were super sketchy, and real estate was like, I can touch this and process it and understand that this is good for me. So that was the lane that I stuck in. But first, before making it into a business for what I do now, first it was for myself because I needed to figure out a smart way. You earn this money from all your hard work, and then you give it back to the government. It's backwards. You don't. There are other options, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Tons of people just accept taxes. And I mean, the more you learn about real estate, that is for a surprising percentage of the people who get into it, that is their primary motive. like I want to reduce my taxes. And you don't have to just waste money. You can make money and save taxes. So it's a very unique opportunity. So what was the first thing that jumped out? I mean, is it depreciation that was the first thing that you looked at? You're like, okay, this actually makes sense. I understand this. This can help save me money.
Yeah, before I wasn't keen on all the strategies, and my wife was a real estate professional, yet we didn't have her. She wasn't classified as one. This is years back. She ran our Airbnbs full time. My wife was a nurse, and then when she stopped working, that's what she did. And so this is an active daily occurrence. And I figured, well, whatever her designation is with the IRS, I still can depreciate some of these properties that we had. I had never done a cost segregation study prior to this, and then figured out, well, I can actually get all my properties done, and then I can go and figure out a way without investing a lot more time. How can I find people that are, that seem trustworthy, that have been in business for years? How can I earn, money through real estate and then get a tax break? It was all for me. It was less about the returns and more about like, where's this money going, or who is it going with, and what's my tax benefit going to look like? So that was the motivating factor. And once you get a taste of, using bonus depreciation to its benefit, and to your own benefit, it's very hard to unsee it.
Right. It's hard to unsee it. It's also hard to ever pay taxes. I mean, everybody pays taxes at some degree. It's just you can reduce it by so much, especially for the past few years and potentially this year if the Senate, obviously Trump will pass it if he gets it on his desk, but the new bonus depreciation bill. But yeah, it's a really really interesting way. What's interesting about depreciation is that it's one of the things when you go into a deal you can more or less count on. Like it's your occupancy might dip more than you thought. Rent increases might take longer. There's all sorts of things that can change. But that's one of the things that you can go into with 95 or higher percent confidence that it will work out the way, because you can have a cost segregation study done prior to closing and it doesn't really change much. So for somebody who is not super familiar with cost segregation and bonus depreciation, how would you explain it in your words, and like how is it explained to you to where you thought, okay, this makes total sense, I need to do this?
I try to always think about it from someone who's not in real estate, to try to figure out, okay, number one, do you own a house? And if they do, okay, you own your own home. I want you to go look on your tax return and see if you see a depreciation amount. So many people, number one, what does depreciation mean? Or they may not know how it works, that they're currently actually taking it, whether they know it or not, just on a standard approach. So the way I explain it to people is, if you have property, an investment property, or you're part of an investment as a passive investor, that property we're going to reclassify or redefine, like, how can we take the standard depreciation and front load it into the first year. So by splitting things up into their property life, whether it's 5-year property or 15-year, depending on what that specific thing is, we basically, and I try not to get too in the weeds about it, because then people just get confused. But I'm like, take something that's spread out over 27 and a half years, 27 and a half years. Yeah. So for their home. So take that and front load it to year one as much as you can by identifying items within the house. And then we're going to take that loss and we're going to put it in a piggy bank, because you have to assume people aren't going to be real estate professionals, right? The average person doesn't have that luxury. So I'll tell them, if you do this study, you can put it in a piggy bank. And then in the future, if you have long-term capital gains or other passive income, that negative amount, let's call it minus 100,000, just sits there and you can utilize it. You don't have to use it your first year. It's just there when you need it. So it's this idea of, like, however you're stacking up investments or looking at real estate compared to the stock market or whatever it may be, just know, like you said, you can count on that, outside of all the other variables, that's going to happen year one, because it's real. It can happen now. And then all of a sudden, if you free up money that you would have otherwise paid to the government, you can, number one, you're saving it, but secondly, you can put your money to work much quicker somewhere else. So, and that's kind of like the part that you really can't measure, that when you're comparing these two, metrics to one another. So cost segregation is an amazing tool that, again, shout from the rooftops once you know about it. And like you mentioned, hopefully this year, I think that in the industry, if it's brought back to 100% bonus depreciation, I think that that will be something that will really jumpstart or act as a catalyst for the industry, because investors are going to get moving again. People are sitting on a records amount of cash right now, not knowing what to do. I think something like that, if the correct messaging is given, like, hey, you can really save on your taxes, or shelter it against future earnings, I think it's hard to ignore.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I've found about it, a lot of people are aware, at least a lot of entrepreneurs are aware that, hey, if I want to save money on my taxes, I need to lower my income, right? And their first thought is I need to spend money on things. I need to buy a car. I need to buy this, whatever they can, but they're actually spending real dollars. The most interesting thing about depreciation, I think confuses a lot of people, is you're not actually spending the money that counts as a loss. That's what I think sets it apart from all the other, tax things out there. Is that it's just money the IRS is letting you claim that you lost. I mean, I'm in the mobile home park space. I know you are as well. When I buy a park, I'm not actually expecting to lose 70% of the purchase price, but the IRS lets me say I did. And that's totally above board. It's exactly in the tax code. It's one of the greatest things about it because you can actually make money, right? You buy a property that we think is going to go up in value. From a tax perspective, we're allowed to say, hey, it's actually, we bought it for $1 million. We think it's only worth about 300,000 now because we're going to depreciate everything else. It's totally, it's just not the way people think about things logically. It's not logical. I will admit that, but it's how they wrote the tax code. So that's just what we follow. And it's a super huge advantage to anybody looking to get into real estate.
And sometimes, like, finding the right way to tell someone, like, no, this is a paper loss, not a real loss. What does that mean? Because if, let's say I work for a large company and I have a 401k, and I talk to someone about, okay, how can I reduce my taxes? If spending isn't the answer, I hear people talk about strategies with tax loss harvesting. Tax loss harvesting is selling stock or funds or whatever that you've lost money on, and just go ahead and let's do that now. Let's document that loss so we can offset other gains. Why? You're still losing money. You're losing money taking that approach. Yeah, you're getting a loss on it, but like, you're truly losing the money. And so, to your point, with these mobile home parks or whatever, whatever real estate asset class you're in, it's not losing money. It's in the tax code. It's a paper loss, and that that is the most difficult thing that I have seen in terms of getting maybe somebody outside of the industry to understand that, because it sounds fake and too good to be true. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the best case I would give you is the Trump versus Hillary debate, where they attacked him for claiming these losses to offset his income. And he just said, of course I do it. And, he famously points at Hillary and says, all of her donors do it. Like it's what the
Yeah.
wealthy do. I think it's not only because they're wealthy, I think it's also how they get wealthy. I mean, if you take 30% of everything you make every year and you just extrapolate that over 30 plus years, imagine if you could keep that and push the taxes down the line, because that's what you're doing with the depreciation. You're not saying, hey, we don't know it. You're just saying, hey, we're not owning it today. It's a super important wealth builder to like really keep more of the money you earn, because for most people that get into investing, they make enough. They need to focus on keeping more. And that's one of the things I think is not talked about enough in real estate, is that it is one of the best ways to keep money. Because by the time you're at a point where, hey, you're investing in real estate, you have excess cash. You know how to make it. Now it's time to learn how to keep it.
Yeah, and like you said, they've already made it, right? And it's harder to go out and earn more money if you have something, you always tackle. Like, if you're looking at your financial situation, you might say, I'm going to tackle what's my low hanging fruit. Well, in this case, if you want to make 100 grand more a year, that's difficult. There's work that's going to go into that. But if you have, real estate at your disposal, or an investment property that you can do a study on, and you can save money, so, like, expenses, saving on expenses is easier than making more revenue in business or more salary if you work. So, yeah, people should be going after it. Again, subject to what happens with taxes, and I don't think that over the next 2 years it goes away. We're set to expire in 2027, correct? As it
Yeah,
stands.
it's going down about 20%. It started at 100%, then 80, then 60.
Yeah,
It's
40,
interesting
20,
because
0, we're done.
I,
But
I interviewed a guy on the podcast who does cost segregation studies, And he was explaining this is not just a bonus depreciation thing. This has happened for years before that. So it still will make sense.
Good. That's nice to hear too, because then you'd hate to know that if it goes away from legislation, then the party's over. But so I like hearing that. Um, you talked about though, I was thinking you asked me earlier about like what would I tell business owners too. I mentioned my answer was act like you're selling your business, even when you're not. It's going to make you run your business better. But the other thing would be like tying into what you said earlier is set yourself up for something outside of your primary business. Like have other income streams that come in. Retirement accounts are good. Like I'm not some real estate fanatic that says like don't invest in the market, and I think people should. I think there's a healthy approach to do both. You shouldn't have some people do and do tremendously well, but I disagree with having 100% of everything you have into real estate. But for those that don't plan, for these other streams outside of their business, like you talked about when you worked at the restaurant, the gal had a neck issue that prevented her from going to work. That affected her business. You never know. I could get cancer tomorrow and have to, step away from, my day to day. These things you can't plan for. You know, Someone may die. You might get a diagnosis or a disability. Like there's that whole thing of you never know what can come up, and I feel like too many people wait until like that's not going to happen to me because I'm healthy. But until they see it, and then they're like, oh my god, change my whole perspective. It's like for people that haven't ever witnessed a hurricane. I have never witnessed a hurricane in the aftermath of a hurricane. I will personally say that if I see it on the news, I'm not able to relate to the degree to somebody who's in that hurt. There's just no comparison. And the same thing goes for, especially for young guys like us, like, nah, I'm healthy and I'm invisible. No, you're not. You got a family now and you never know what tomorrow brings. Nobody's protected. So that's my advice. Like set something up to whatever it is, if you call it a side hustle or anything. Doesn't need to be real estate, but something to where if you stepped away from your business, you have something.
Right. Oh, that's great advice. So when and this is related to that. When you sold your dry cleaning business, what kind of multiple did it sell for?
They so the industry standard is like 3. Mine was higher, but that was primarily because we had reached a certain gross profit amount. And so the way that you look at it is you always have your standard, and then when you get to scale and you get to higher multiples, or sorry, higher like gross profit, at that point groups are looking at you to where they'll say, hey, this is actually more than just the standard multiple. This is a big operation. So I was able to go slightly above that. I'm not able to say what my exact multiple was,
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
yeah, I would say like 3%. And a lot of people in the industry were like, I'll give you 2.5, times EBITDA. And the industry wasn't used to like acquiring and growing. So it was mainly, okay, sophisticated people from the outside of the industry that come in and say, look, we recognize that you're already at a level much higher than a standard operator. So as in turn, we get rewarded by having a more stable business. You get rewarded with a higher multiple.
And what's interesting about that, so you mentioned a 3 times multiple, right? If we looked at that from a real estate perspective, that's essentially a 33% cap rate, right? And what I find a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is they look at real estate from a multiple perspective and think, man, this is, you look at a 5 cap, that's essentially a 20 multiple, a 20x multiple. And so their perception is, oh, well, you can't make as much money in real estate. You can only do that in business. When I think the reality is what people have to realize, one, that multiple can work for you because you can take something in a area where you can get a 5 cap or essentially a 20x multiple. You can double the revenue and the profit of that property and you reap the benefits of, but 20 times whatever you make, which is a huge advantage. The other factor is real estate is so stable in comparison to businesses. I mean, there's real estate that can lose value overnight for, economic changes and that sort of thing. But in businesses, it's far more common. So what I started realizing when I looked into real estate, hey, a 10 cap is kind of high, which is a 10x multiple. So that should tell you this is a pretty stable investment, even if it's not necessarily the greatest one in the world. Like that, it's a very interesting dichotomy there where yes, you can make more money, but it's also because of way higher risk, even if you don't perceive it to be risk.
Yeah, they for that reason, and to your point, yeah, a lot of people don't think about it that way. And a lot of people get hung up to what I see in terms of like getting involved is number one, myself included, when I had the business and I was doing real estate on the side, buying these properties, I only thought you could go actively. I thought you had to manage everything. And as a result, we only have so many hours in our day. You can get lousy at, certain components of it where that was also discovery getting out of the business and thinking, okay, how can I still satisfy my needs of like having all that time, grow bigger, grow my portfolio more personally, and then from there, like, once you see that these things are attainable and that real estate is the way, that's when I, got focused on it. And then, fast forward after doing it for myself, like day one when the business sold, I told you, what do I do with this? Let's go put it to work. Let's give every dollar a job and make a smart investment. Slowly, right? Number one, though, for me is not return. It was preservation of my capital, my money, and the ability to write off taxes. Again, I could not unsee it. I never go back, assuming we can, that's there forever. Um, so that's kind of like the transition of getting into the business because I thought I didn't know. I want to tell other people they should know that they need to start doing this now outside their business because you own mobile home parks and you'll know that cash flow maybe of one might not pay all your bills. Maybe it will. Some of them are great, but these things, real estate's a slow game, but when you get in and it snowballs and it becomes powerful. So I just tell people, get involved when you can, how you can to try to help yourself and your wealth to where like when you step away someday, you've got options and you have time.
Right. I mean, like real estate is, and business owners understand this better than anybody. Real estate is a business. Whether, I mean, I'm in parks, which have to be the lowest level of operations of any asset class, but there's still a lot of work to do. So I think a lot of people jump in and they think real estate is passive. Well, it can be passive, but it's passive typically after you've done a lot of work to set up the systems.
Yeah.
So, a lot of entrepreneurs look at what I do. They're like, man, you can't be doing much all day. It's like, I don't know how to tell you. Like, it never stops. Like, I'm always doing something. And look at, I would ask people about their business and they say the same thing. Hey, like on the outside, it doesn't look like much, but behind the scenes, it's a ton. Well, it's the same in real estate, right? It's the same with anything. And I think the best operators I've found look at real estate like a business and run it that way. And when you do that, you realize like, okay, there is a huge advantage to working with somebody who does this all day long, right? Because I would suck if I went out and tried to start a dry cleaner. I could figure it out,
Yeah.
but that's not an investment for me. Like if I went out and did that, I would much rather just say, hey, I have some money. You know how to run dry cleaners. Could you help me grow this? Would you partner? Unfortunately, most people, when they try to get into real estate, they don't think that way. They think of, oh, I need to buy a property. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes involved with that. You've got to find the deal. You've got to close it. You've got to go to a bank. You got to raise the money. You got to find a property manager. It becomes very involved very quickly. And it's far easier for people when they want to get started or when they want to keep growing to find somebody who's already doing it, already has the systems, and just ride their coattails. Like trust me, they've made the mistakes, which everybody's going to do in any business. You get into it, you're going to make mistakes. Those people who have, figured those out and are still going, those are the people that you can really help you get to your goals much, much quicker than doing it yourself.
Well, to your point, even from someone who like I was a seasoned, I had my own properties. I managed my own stuff, residential, commercial, industrial, right, and some land. It's so much better. I'm having so much more fun on the passive side, like just letting people who are professionals go in and say, "Hey, you are the man or the woman. You run this, and you're going to be better at it." Like there's simply not enough time in the day to do it all. And so, to your point, with any business, those options are out there. You just got to make sure. Uh, I was used to so much control being a business owner. everything I thought that I had a pulse on and I controlled. And that was my very first wake up call getting into passive investing. It's like, oh, I don't have control anymore. So it's like scary for me, but then it's very nice because you're like, you do all, what work you can in the beginning. And then it's like pressing the easy button. Like once you're like, got it, I'm going to press that button. The rest is history. You get, and there's always people, the operator or whoever's running that deal gets their cut as they should. They're doing all the work. So it's great that that exists, and I feel number one, we're both in the industry, so we may hear about this all the time. But um, I talk to people outside the industry, and they're like, that's BS. That I heard my friend flipped a house once and got screwed over. They lost all their money, and it's like, no, yes, that's so true, and people can lose all their money, but that's why you find people that do this as a business and not, Tommy wants to flip a house. Let's
Right.
go, let's go do this and put our money together. That's when you introduce more risk that's probably unnecessary. More
Right.
money, more risks, right? They have more upside in that deal, but there is risk that comes with it.
More control, more responsibility. They go hand in hand. And
Yeah.
I found the same thing as I've grown my portfolio from one to now we're working on the 10th park now. There's things I could do 2 years ago, and I had enough time to do it and do it really well. And I had control over it, and I loved that feeling. And now it's like, oh crap, it's been 2 months. I didn't do that. And it's now it's turned that control is now responsibility. So now I'm in the phase where it's like I have even doing it all actively all day every day. I'm still out of time to run some of these things, and I'm having to find people to do it. And so scaling a real estate portfolio is if you're going to invest in the property as the sole person, it's not like a stock, right? Stocks, people are used to it being passive, but real estate, you can do it that way. You just have to, it just depends on how things are structured. But transitioning into what you're doing now, can you kind of walk us through what your model is now, like what asset class you look for and how you go about it?
Yeah. So, like I told you, I started for personal needs. And then after thinking, what kind of business am I going to get into? Um, I I fell in love with the passive investing, even being an active investor. So, what I do now is I look for, low risk investments that these aren't, there are a lot of returns out there that look amazing on paper, but that keeps me away as a personal investor. So I try to find, and there's two particular classes I focus on right now. It's private lending and then the mobile home parks. So you get a little bit of the debt component, the straight short-term income. You can have the equity component where you're getting the appreciation, the tax benefits, the cash flow. I think there's a fit for everyone's current situation, but I focus in those two, and then basically I will go and try to align myself with people like seasoned operators like yourself. Okay, you're approaching double digit parks, and vet this person, add layers of due diligence, put my own money into it. I don't consider myself somebody that would ever say, I'm not going to try it, but you should. I just don't think that like makes sense. Um, and people were like, well, how can when you keep doing that, what if you run out of money? It's like, well, that's my business. My business is making sure that like I'm in it with everyone as well. So, um, transitioning onto the business side, I wanted to bring what I had learned to other business owners that spend all their time in their business. That was me, 75 hours a week, head in the sand, just doing what I thought I could to do run my business as best as I could. No such thing as broker relationships or networking or going in like, hanging out in the high circles. Like none of that stuff existed. When I ran my business, it was I would go to work in the dark and I would come home in the dark. And then when I shut my eyes, I would dream about what I needed to do at work. And I was like, it just becomes an unhealthy thing that now I like helping people say, hey, keep doing what you do. If that's your number one moneymaker, keep doing it. But let's help you do some stuff to where we're not occupying any more time, but maybe you can build some wealth, have some options for yourself. So I kind of like, make it the mission to share that these things exist with people because I used to think active real estate was the only way. And to your point, tenants, headaches, problems, I still have my own properties that I manage, and I got laughing about it with my wife the other night. Like two text messages, like 10 minutes apart from different properties. These two are residential from my like very day one in real estate kind of deal, and both the HVAC systems went out. Boom. It's like this thing
Yeah.
happens, and like there's a better way. You don't have to deal with that. Somebody does. To your point, like this is hard work. It's like running a business, but yeah, that's what I love to do and share with people now is that there is a way to get involved without being involved.
Yeah, and another, to that point, another thing I don't think gets enough attention as it should. You mentioned that one of your two key factors where you wanted tax depreciation, you also, or not depreciation, but you wanted to save on taxes and you wanted to preserve your capital. Well, one of the things that people don't realize with most commercial real estate until you get to a very large number is you're going to have to sign on the note. Like I that was one of the myths I think I heard, like I reading all the residential real estate bigger pockets book, learning about houses. Oh, when it's commercial, they don't even look at you. They just look at the property. It's like maybe on like $10 million loans, but below that, no, they're absolutely making sure you're signing on it. It doesn't matter if you set up some LLC or whatever, they're going to make you, like I, Jeff, have to sign that I will repay the loan in any scenario for most of pretty much every deal I've done outside of seller financing. And for people in the preservation of capital phase, that sometimes is enough of a factor to be like, okay, maybe a limited partner makes more sense. Because limited partners, I mean, the whole reason you call it that is because they're limited in their losses to their investment. Now, capital calls and stuff, depending on operation agreements, can come up. I think nowadays most operators don't do required capital calls just because people won't invest in it because
Yeah.
like you said, they can force you to do it. So most of them today, even if there are capital calls, they're voluntary and whatnot, but you might get diluted or whatever. But that's a huge advantage too, because a lot of people will ask me, what's my skin on the game? And, do I think catastrophic losses of a property are realistic? No, I try to avoid it like the plague and only buy properties where I can't foresee that. Or if there is a case, it's something I can insure. But it is still it is a factor, right? If you owned an office building 5 years ago, you might have thought you had a rock solid asset. Well, maybe you didn't, right? It would really suck to
Yeah.
have your name on the loan for a $10 million property that's now worth 3. And we see that happening all over the place. And so, yeah, nobody likes losing money, but the worse than that is losing money you don't have. And that's what can really jump up and get you if you start getting into real estate where you're leveraging everything to make the properties perform well. And not a lot of people in real estate do it all cash. Most of them are using debt to a certain degree. And so it's something to really understand. Like there's a reason why, because it's stable. But in those, black swan events, you want to make sure that you're not in a position where you could lose it all. And I've seen people find themselves in that situation, and it's terrifying.
I like seeing too in terms of debt now, you know, being more involved in the space, you see that more and more of these deals, more equity is being raised, less leverage from the bank, and not getting it to a point to what happened with, multifamily in 2022, 2023. Um, so I like that component of it too. More people are being safer. They're going into the deal with more money. And also, you talked about someone being a limited partner. The cool thing about that too is also from like a legal standpoint, if somebody has, assets or whatever they worry about, you're so far down the line if you're a limited partner in a deal with no, participation whatsoever, that there's a shield there as well. So to your point, it's one more added benefit to where, if you run a business and then have a property, personally, when that personal injury lawyer comes knocking on your door, they're going to try to hunt down anything you have. And so there's some protection in terms of being a fully limited partner as well that's attractive.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, I am a general partner in some deals. I am a limited partner in some others, and there's pros and cons. I mean, if people take the entrepreneurship role and they want to get into the real estate business and they want to be what I call a real estate entrepreneur, where it's not always your capital, it's other people's. There are pros to that, right? There's unlimited upside. Like you're not limited by your personal capital to do things. But for a lot of other people, they've already kind of figured that out with their business. And it's easier for them to use their unlimited potential at that business and just write a check and put it into a real estate deal where they have to do nothing. And I think a lot of people are learning as syndications and joint ventures and things like that, and fractional investing are becoming more popular. There's more opportunities for people to do that, which I think is awesome, because more people are getting access to this that either didn't have access before or they just didn't know about it. A lot of
Yeah.
people just, I can't tell how many people I know, like my own mom, when I told her I was doing a syndication, she's like, isn't that like mafia related? I was like, no, it's not, not mafia related. Yes, that was a crime syndicate, but that's not what I'm doing, obviously. I hope you wouldn't think I would just tell you that, but yeah.
Yeah. You think I'm running mobile home parks. It's much deeper, Ma.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
much deeper. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the partnerships, I think mostly again from personal experience and now being in the business, I see that it's just most people just don't know. And there are so many, like, what do you believe? Like, how do people take their news or learn about things? Some people go and read stuff. A lot of people go to podcast or, social media. You get on social media, every other thing that I get on my accounts is how I'm going to earn 20% returns guaranteed, little money down kind of thing. And it's just like, there's so much crap that's out there that, like, educating people, finding good people that you're like, there's a lot of crap and I'm going to align with that person because I don't want to have to deal with the crap. Like, that person's going to get me there, and they're running their operation like a business and not, you know, not anything that it shouldn't be. So, yeah, had someone come to me, 8 years ago, 7 year, whatever, and said, "Hey, there's a better way on this real estate stuff. Do you want to try this also?" I would have done both. I wanted to do the active side because it helped me learn the business. I think it was an important part of understanding this whole space, but also I definitely would have wanted the easy button too, because everyone's burnt out.
So when you started getting into real estate, I'm sure you kind of did what most of us did. You looked at a lot of different assets and tried to figure out which one made the most sense to you. And you landed on mobile home parks. You've got your debt fund, obviously, but now you're getting involved with mobile home parks. I love always hearing the answer to this question. Like when you first thought of investing in a mobile home park or buying a mobile home park, what crossed your mind?
Honestly, I felt that it was an asset class that would, I don't want to use the security, but I felt that for the mobile home parks, um, it's affordable housing. I knew that you can't just create them wherever you want. And so I was like, okay, there's supplies limited. It's affordable housing. I don't think people move around as much. I now know that they don't, but when I first got into it, and it was something that I thought, this is really easy. I can manage the dirt, or hope to just manage the dirt and have lot rent and go from there. So I liked the simplicity of it. I'm not saying it's easy, right? Like, you run, they're not easy, and there is no such thing. Like, anytime you find success in something, it is hard work. But that was what drew me to it. So I started focusing first as a LP and a limited partner in these deals into that space, and then from a business perspective, it's interesting because, like, I feel I'm fortunate to where, running a business, I was able to see how a lot of other businesses are run. And I also understood the real estate component. So for me personally, I think that all asset classes have their worth. You can talk to someone, who does single family homes that people say, no, you need to graduate from single family homes. I know people in Austin that have, they got 50 plus single family homes, and he'd be pointing and laughing at people saying that you can't make a ton of money and have wealth from single family homes. There are lots of ways to do it. And so for me, from the business side, I thought, I back to the passion thing. I'm most passionate about that. I like them the most. And so I need to concentrate and put my efforts there. I don't want to be this jack of all trades that can say, here is your big menu, what would you like to do today? So I want to focus in on something, and I felt good about mobile home parks. So that's why I like them.
Interesting. I mean, you had an easier transition than most. Like my first impression, I drove by one for 4 years in a row from where I lived to where I went to school. I never once thought about it as a real estate investment, like one time ever. I didn't even know what they were. I didn't know if it was like privately owned land or like government land. I never even thought about it. And so it's interesting that you kind of came into it with the knowledge of the pros, because there are a lot of pros. And I'd say one of the biggest pros is that most people don't think about them. Like,
Yeah.
they're super, super overlooked.
They're under the radar
It's
for sure.
Yeah, it's changing. They're getting more and more popular, which is good and it's bad. As a buyer, it's bad, right? As
Yeah.
maybe a seller one day, it's good. It would suck to own something that there's no buyers for, so it's good that there's more people getting into it. But it's always fascinating because it's such a random thought. Like it's not something people. The perceptions is that it's super unstable. They're super hard to manage. Nobody wants them, and it's like no, that's the opposite. Like they're very very easy to manage. They're very stable and a lot of people want them. It's odd. It's definitely changing, but it's a really interesting asset class because it's so overlooked.
I think it's also unfamiliar territory. So many people when they get into real estate, myself included, start with a residential property and a rental, long-term rentals because it's familiar. You've bought a house, you can go this route. If you have the means to put money into real estate, then perhaps that your vision is on like what you think where you think you would want to live. But a smart person in business will understand that this product provides, I'll call it a product, it provides affordable housing. It's got the supply cap, like I mentioned. And as you said, really easy to manage and quite the opposite of what people, the stigma that they may get. There are beautiful mobile home parks around the US. I know you've probably been to them, but like community centers, paved roads, sidewalks, nicer than like, where my first house was. People just don't know. They don't know. They think they have this idea of like, oh no, that's low end, and I think they're very wrong. And I'm happy to your point that like they're becoming more popular. It's not like it's just it's I think it's a win for both parties. For everybody wants to live in a better community. If you're in the investment world, you want to get into something that's stable to where you can grow. I think it checks both boxes.
Yeah, it's. I will tell you, I've been to some of the nice parks. I've been to some of the worst parks. The stigma is well deserved, but I will say the stigma is changing. And what has happened, like you mentioned burnout earlier, talking about the dry cleaning business, the same thing happens with mobile home park owners. And that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing all these park owners who have owned it for 20, 30 years and they're just burnt out. And what's interesting, it's such a simple business. You rent people the land underneath their house and their house is already there. It's so easy to run that they do such a poor job over time that they leave these opportunities out there for the right person. They're very easy to turn around if you do it enough times. And it's fascinating to see where the industry is going because now what we're seeing is I think in the next decade we're going to see parks be developed for the first time in multiple decades. I mean, there's parks here and there that have been built,
Yeah.
but I see the prices of what these parks are selling for per lot, and I'm doing the calculations. There's a lot of regions where it's cheaper to build them than it is to buy them, and that has not been the case for years, for decades. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that, which is good, right? It is like you said, it's affordable housing. And what's interesting about the term affordable housing, a lot of what people think is they think Section 8, they think of all sorts of different government programs. Well, that's an actual term, affordable housing, where the government has to get involved to make it affordable. Mobile home parks are just fundamentally affordable. They're not government backed. There's no, policies that could get undone by a next president that would change the basic fundamentals that you're renting people land. It's very cheap.
Yeah. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that I remember when I first got the bug to get involved with them, this was, I don't know, 17. I went out, I was like, I'm gonna buy a park this year. So I went, this was one at the time, and it was in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I went out there and I got my first tour of all these mobile home parks. And it was like it was eye-opening in two ways. The first was like you quickly realize what you don't want to get into. I went into one park that low price point. I think it was at the time it was like $450,000. But all park owned homes. And I went into those homes and the floors were sunken in. And there was drugs in the house. Like it was a mess. And you quickly realize like, okay, this isn't good. Let's go to the next one. As that day went on, then I started seeing like mobile home parks or communities in the countryside that were absolutely gorgeous. And I was like, I would live here. This is amazing, and that's what people. Yes, to your point, they get a reputation, as does everything, every property, every group of people, every anything that in this world can get a reputation based on what people think. But there are good and bad of both. And it's finding the people that can find the good and run with it, is who you want to team up with.
Right. So now in your journey, are you what type of mobile home park deals are you looking for? Are you guys looking for stabilized ones, the nice ones? Are you looking to find rough ones that you can turn into nice ones? What is your kind of bread and butter that you're looking
Yeah,
for?
I think so. Like having a small value add component is always attractive, just because of the upside to it. But I'll assess everything as it comes. Like if something is pretty stable, I'll call it more of an institutional look for these really, really large parks. I think those are great. Maybe there's less upside, but then you can think about, if it's valued on a cap rate and you've got 200 lots and you can raise your lot rent $30, like immediately you can see the strength in numbers. And so I like both. I think that I would stay away from the really small major rehab projects. Again, they'll probably yield the best returns if someone executes that plan properly. But I like having, stuff that might be a B that could turn into an A, right? Like I don't want a D minus that, could get to a B, if that makes sense. If you're
Yeah.
grading them that way. So, yeah, and then just finding people that have the experience to do it. And if, whether it's my goal is to align myself with operators that are sound and safe and that have been doing this. People I like, you understand, like, like this is all partnership stuff. You and I have known each other for a while now, and thank you, by the way, for having me on here. It's
Yeah.
so it was fun because it's like, oh, he's not a stranger. I'm talking to Jeff today, so I like, again, the people in the industry are great. The one thing I'll say about this industry that's different than some in real estate, everybody kind of brings each other up. So there is so much, it's not like, if you get a good deal that you've burned somebody else. It's like, no, it's it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and these people, that you want to celebrate wins, and if somebody fails you want to help them get through it and say, hey, how can I help? I like the industry for that. They really seem to like support each other, much more than I've seen like in the prime, in the business world where it's like I'm your competitor. Now, like you said earlier, we're seeing much more creative financing, joint ventures, fund managers working with park operators. There's a lot of synergies that are there, maybe were more untapped in the past, that now people are realizing like this is good practice to follow. So I don't know. It's fun stuff, man. I know we talk forever about this stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that is interesting about parks in particular, you and it's a really interesting point that you've already observed that people are rooting for each other. It's not like I don't view other park owners or other people doing exactly what I do going after the same exact deal as competition. Like they might buy a deal I wanted, but the biggest threat to a mobile home park owner, well, not even a threat, but like the worst thing you can have is a deal that you did a perfect job. You bought it, it was undervalued, you got the values up, everything's going well. And then you go to get it appraised, and the appraiser looks at that mom and pop park on the outside of town that's completely mismanaged, and they just apples to apples, they make a comparison when they shouldn't. And they say, hey, you're at 400 lot rent. It looks like there's a comp down the street at 150. So we're not going to, it hurts your value,
Yeah.
right? As a park owner, what I want to see is I want to see every single one of these parks that is undervalued by these mom and pops get bought by somebody who knows what they're doing and can maximize the value, because it financially helps me when they do that.
Yes.
And that is the fundamental driving force behind the industry. And that's why, I just talked to a friend earlier this week who bought a park in Alabama that I really wanted. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather it go to him than it not sell, because I want to see everything get lifted up. And it is interesting because you see a lot more collaboration. I think we're going to see more of that because opportunities are getting harder and harder to find. People are going to, people like the fundamentals of the industry. Even myself, as somebody who could, if I wanted to go out and do a deal all by myself, I'd rather just partner with somebody and take half than to not do anything, right? And I think we're going to see more of that going forward.
Yeah, I'm happy that you share that sentiment too. I think you're absolutely right. Like more partnerships, um, because also then the benefit is you're working with another group, and you know entrepreneurship is lonely. If you do something
Yeah.
by yourself over and over, it's it's good to have a team member or let's say a partner hold you accountable. So another benefit that people don't talk about much is like if you go to work every day by yourself, but then let's say you bring in a partner with you and they're just an ace. They're really good at operations or pushing you, nobody works out. That's why we go and get a personal trainer or work, you never work out as hard as you do when you're alone versus when somebody's pushing you to do it. So cool added bonus to partnerships as well that there's an unforeseen benefit that helps everybody.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Ian, can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit here with me today and talk through these things. I always love talking parks with other park operators. So, but before we go, if people want to get a hold of you, they want to learn more about what you're doing and how they can get involved with some mobile home park deals with you, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I would say visit my site. It's runsteadyinvestments.com. So on there we have some information of some of the offerings that we currently have open and you can sign up for our mailing list. I'd say that's the best way because, I want to meet people that are interested in this space and figure out how I can help. So, yeah, signing up on our website for our investor club, we share tips, deals, things we're involved with and like having fun. So that is the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, great. I appreciate it again. It was a great episode. I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this and hear, especially entrepreneurs, they're going to hear a lot of similarities between where they're at in business and how you've transitioned into real estate now. So again, can't say thank you enough.
Jeff, appreciate it. Have fun with you today.
Perfect. See you.
All right, take care.